Vice President, accompanied with that, or this year's secretary. So I just wanted to give a quick announcement for the C-section announcement. Coming up, we have on May 16th, next weekend, we have a joint bike ride with ITS and ITE. On June 5th, we have the Academy Happy Hour, which has, we're collaborating with 7 other organizations for a big networking event here on People on Telegraph. And we are taking donations for raffle prizes. If you have a unique skill you want to show off to the industry, or just a cool beach house that you want to give away for the weekend, we are open to that. And then if you have a hard time hearing during the presentation or seeing, we do have some seats on the sides as well if you want to come up. And next, I present to you Tony. He's going to be giving the Western District update.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Great to see everyone out today. I'm Tony Henderson. Hi, Mark. I am the Secretary Treasurer for ITE Western District. I also happen to serve as the Section Administrator here at SFA. Just wanted to give a couple updates about the Western District and what's going on. We do have the annual meeting coming up here in Bellevue, Washington, just across the lake from Seattle, the last week of June. Although early registration just closed, there's still opportunities to register. I believe there's a few hotel rooms left at our Overflow Hotel. For those of you who have not heard, there's a little soccer match going on around the same time. So there's going to be a lot of exciting activities just throughout the region. And but that did make hotels a little bit tighter. We do have some negotiated rates. So if you're going, please get those hotel bookings in as soon as possible to make sure you have that. We also have our annual elections coming up. We're doing elections a little bit different on the Western District this year. Traditionally, it's been the 30 days leading up to the annual meeting, and we find out who wins at the annual meeting. We're moving it to be 30 days following the annual meeting so that there's an opportunity to interact with the candidates at the annual meeting for those who attend. We have basically 2 open positions this year, which is our Secretary Treasurer for the next year, as well as our International Director who serves for 3 years. We have 2 great candidates for both positions. I encourage you to look at the Western ITE's website, which is westernite.org. You can get information about all those candidates and take a look at who you want to vote for. And if you go to Western District, feel free to meet with them and hear about why they're running and why they're interested in serving in these roles. So those are the updates I want to get from the Western District. Thanks, everyone.
And without further ado, here are presenters or panelists. And from right to left, I would like to present Lan Cruz, the Division Manager of the Department of Transportation at the City of San Jose, Craig Raphael, Speed Camera Program Manager at the City of Oakland, and then Jarrett Hornbostel, who's our acting Speed Camera Manager at the MTA.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to try my best to really talk as loud as I could. Thank you, Sophia, for having us today. Today, I'll be presenting on the San Jose speed safety cameras, and I'll be focusing on the initial phase of the work. City of Oakland will talk about the program launch, the warning period, and SFMTA will talk about the post 1-year implementation challenges and outcomes. So in San Jose, our top collision factor, which I'm sure is at many other places, is speeding. From 2020 to 2024, we experienced over 5,400 crashes related to speeding, and we had 330 people die on our roadways from fatal spirit injuries from speeding. We've been advocating for the past couple of decades on having speed cameras and legalizing it. And it wasn't until AB 645 where it became legal in 2024. This is one of the missing tools in our toolbox for the safe system approach. So AB 645 passed in 2024 or 2023, but we were able to implement in 2024. It's a very, very prescriptive bill. It allows only 6 cities to be part of this pilot program. It includes San Jose, Oakland, San Francisco, Glendale, Long Beach, and Los Angeles. Later, Malibu was added through SB 1297. So we have 5 years to implement this program, or we need to do it before January 2032, whichever comes first. As mentioned, it's a prescriptive bill. Some of the requirements that they had us do before even releasing our proposal to solicit a vendor was to have a stakeholder meeting with our community-based organizations. It was great because we got a lot of good feedback from them that we included in our use policy, as well as our impact report. Once we had those reports together, we had to put it on our website and for 30 days to solicit additional feedback before City Council could adopt these reports. These reports included how the program operates, why we need the program, where the cameras are located, what are we doing in terms of privacy, how are we using the data, how are we using the camera, and also additional, equity assessments in it, and also reporting and evaluation requirements. The good thing, I guess, is that the bill actually requires a lot of these things. So, it was, I wouldn't say it was easy putting these reports together, but it was already required by the bill. So the locations were also, the only places we're allowed to put them on as part of that was written by the bill was safety corridors. This was defined by Caltrans, where PD has responded to repeated events for sideshows and racing, and also in school zones. San Jose is able to implement up to 33 cameras, and this is based off of population. And we were required to ensure that they are distributed across the city geographically, as well as in socioeconomical diverse communities. So for us, we wanted to make sure that it hit all of the council districts. So we promised each of the council members that they would get one. Of course, we looked at the data, but we made sure that it was spread throughout the city. We decided to put all 33 cameras since it's limited on safety corridors. The reason why is because this is where the data shows that our fatal and severe injuries are occurring. The criteria is also included in the California Vehicle Code, and we adopted these safety corridors on March 18, 2025. Some of the criteria included, these had to be on the streets with the highest rates of fatal and severe injury crashes. We had to use 3 to 5 years of data. The safety corridors could be only limited to 20% of our street network. And it's a pretty thorough analysis. It required us to look at quarter-mile segments to make sure that there were overlapping patterns of these crashes, and also identified crashes by traffic mode. Oh, another thing I want to mention is that designating these streets as corridors and getting them, in our case, we got them adopted, is because they helped with lowering speed limits as well. It provided us more flexibility in speed limit setting. So for the location selection, as part of the report, we included 63 segments. This provided us more flexibility when it came down to finalizing our locations. We proposed locations with high posted speed limits, where we had data showing high 85th percentile speeds. Also, where we had data showing there was an excess number of vehicles traveling 10 miles per hour or above the posted speed limit. The reason why for this is because the citations are issued to vehicles when they're traveling 11 plus miles per hour or higher. We focused on crashes that were speeding related, red light running related, and failure to yield to pedestrians. We also wanted to put these in areas where there's a lot of vulnerable roadway users, which are in schools, not school zones, but near schools, senior housing, parks, and commercial districts. One important thing to also note is that the reason why we didn't put these cameras in the school zones is because they would only be operational certain hours in the day. where we wanted to make sure, no, these are enforceable 24 hours a day. So for this pilot, we're focusing on safety first. We really invested in our outreach process. I know there's a 30-day posting requirement for the reports. The bill also requires us to do a 30-day public information campaign before turning on the cameras. We will be doing 60 days. We really use this opportunity to educate the public because we, think it's important to let them know that we're looking for behavioral change. We had 7 town hall meetings throughout the city, and we had over 200 residents come. We had these in different languages if people needed. We also posted our presentation online for those that aren't able to attend. We also put this information on our social media next door. We worked with community-based organizations to get the message out. We also worked with our council offices to get these in their newsletter. And we're partnering up with Oakland and San Francisco through an MTC grant to do a regional. So where are we now? We're a little bit delayed. The big reason is because we actually received a federal grant a few years ago to actually launch this program. We were awarded the grant, but we never got the funding. So unfortunately that delayed our process a little bit, but the city knows how important it is to get these up and running. So we've looked for local funds to start the project. We're currently at the tail end of our contract negotiation. We hope to execute at the end of the month during the summer and launch and go live in September. This wraps up my presentation. I'm going to pass it to Oakland, but I have with me Anna Lay, who's been a huge help in our outreach efforts, and then Town, who also plays a huge effort in this role in receiving and identifying locations. So I'll pass this on to Oakland.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Craig Raphael, pleased to be here to tell you about what's happening with our speed camera program. So following a 2-year planning process, we went live in January. So just a quick overview, 2024, we picked our locations, we did outreach, we drafted the required documents under AB 645. In 2025, we went to City Council to get approval to enter into a contract with Vera Nobility. We signed that contract in October of last year, and then we had 100 days to install everything, cameras, signage, and we met it. We launched on January 14th, 100 days after signing the contract. We started with a 60-day warning period that's mandated by the bill. At all 18 locations, we have 35 cameras at those spread throughout the city. It's 1 camera for each direction of travel. There's 1 on a one-way street. And then March 15th, so just over like 110 days ago, we went citation live at all 18 locations. And it's been fun since then. So here are 18 locations. They're spread throughout Oakland. We chose them based on our high injury network, proximity to crashes where speed was a primary factor. We also looked at things like proximity to sensitive land uses, schools, commercial districts, senior centers, and we wanted to spread them throughout the city as mandated by the bill. They're mostly in the flat parts of Oakland, which is where our highest occurrence of speeding is. There's a lot more places where we could put cameras, but we were limited to just these 18 according to the size of our city and the legislation. We put out an initial report early March. It's posted on our website. The link is there. It covered the first about 5 weeks of the program. So it was showing that cameras were issuing roughly 100 warnings per camera per day on average. And out of those, 2/3 of them went to drivers who had 2 or more warnings. Most people are not speeding. So based on the camera data, we can see that the average speed of all traffic is close to the posted speed limit. There's also some data in there around our top locations. So 73rd Avenue, which is a 3-lane going to a 4-lane street in each direction. Broadway's in a 20-mile-per-hour zone. Higginberger's an extension of 73rd. 98th Avenue goes to the freeway. 7th Street, which is a 3-lane road in each direction. West Grand going into the freeway. So it's at the locations kind of where you imagine they would be. We also published some data around when during the day in terms of hours, as well as days of the week. So that was our initial report. We have preliminary data from post-citation live, so that's covering roughly the first 5 weeks. So we've issued 82,000 citations and 69,000 warnings. So according to Assembly Bill 645, after the citation period starts, if the camera catches a car going 11 to 15 miles per hour over the speed limit, it is still a warning. So that's why we are continuing to issue warnings. On average, across all the cameras, it's 60 citations per camera per day and 50 warnings per camera per day. It's quite high. The locations are consistent with the initial report that we put out, so it's still Broadway, 73rd, Higginberger, Grand Avenue. There's a lot of work when you launch a program like this, so we are really in the trenches around providing customer support, customer service. A lot of people are using our fine reduction waivers if they become criteria around public benefits, so that takes processing time, as well as community service. We offer classes through an online platform, and a lot of people are using that as well. Also, a lot of people who get citations when they're driving rental cars, that takes processing, or if they sold the car, the DMV data isn't always up to date because if the buyer doesn't re-register the car, then the previous owner still gets citations. So we're mired in a lot of that right now, but the team's doing amazing. We will be putting out our next report in mid-July, and that's where we'll have our first speed comparison data. So we did speed surveys when we were picking locations in summer of 2024, and then we repeated them in summer of 2025. So we will continue that this summer to start to look at what the impacts of the program will be, but it's still very much early days as we just launched citations 6 weeks ago. We will have plenty of time for questions at the end, but that is what I have. Thank you. Sure.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Jared Hornbostel with SFMTA, City of San Francisco. So much like Oakland and San Jose, we went through the same processes to outreach, choose locations, and start up the program. And I think the experiences that Lam and Craig talked about are shared in San Francisco. A lot of the decision making is very similar as well. So I'm going to focus on what we're now seeing about 1 year after we've launched our program. So after we were able to begin working on this in 2024, we had committed to standing up the program as quickly as we could. And that resulted in us executing a contract late in 2024 and beginning implementation in the end of the year there. We began issuing warnings at our first camera sites in March of 2025. And as we continued to put up cameras throughout the spring of 2025, we began issuing warnings at our last installed camera in June of 2025. So between March and June, we were putting our cameras up, issuing warnings as we stood the cameras up. And then in June, we began our 60-day mandated warning period, which allowed us to begin issuing citations in August. So we're a year out from our first warnings in March of last year, not quite a year from issuing citations, but we've got some great promising early data to share on the effectiveness of speed camera. So 1 year after launching cameras, we've seen the share of drivers speeding at our camera locations decreased by nearly 80%, 79% exactly. And that translates to 40,000 fewer speeding vehicles at our 33 camera locations. This chart breaks it down on a location by location basis. The blue represents the pre-implementation counts that we did at about 80 locations where we considered putting cameras prior to launching the program. The orange is data we collected last fall, shortly after going citation live, and the magenta or red color is the data that we collected this spring or in February in order to prepare our messaging around our 1-year anniversary. So what you see here is that in blue, the percentage of traffic speeding 10 miles an hour or more above the speed limit at our camera locations varied between a few percent to as much as 30% in the worst case location on Geneva Avenue down near the Daly City border. Since implementing the cameras, we've seen that average number of or average percentage of speeders 10 miles an hour or more above the speed limit decreased to just 2%. So now across our 33 camera locations, we are seeing that dramatic reduction. We have focused on tube studies to tell the story about behavior change. One of the things that we anticipated but have since confirmed is that it's very much an apples to oranges comparison to try to compare camera data against tube study data. It's just different technologies that have different strengths and weaknesses when it comes to accuracy. Tubes are not necessarily the most accurate data collection methodology, but the cameras also have shortcomings in terms of the percentage of traffic they capture and the influence of other factors like construction interruptions, power interruptions, traffic variability, and so on and so forth. So we have really focused on the tube studies to compare against our pre-implementation data to give the most apples to apples comparison and try to remove the effects of these other influences that can change the citation trends. But just to give you an idea, in that 1 year, in that warning period, both the 60 days and the period where we were still standing up cameras, we issued about 362,000 warnings across ultimately our 33 sites. Since going citation live in August, we're closer to 50-50 in terms of the number of warnings versus citations. So as Craig mentioned, you still get that warning for your first violation in the lowest speed category of 11 to 15 miles over the speed limit. And then since citation live through the end of March, we've issued almost 164,000 citations. One of the things that we've been working closely with the vendor on is improvements to the technology. So one of the things that was unique about AB 645 and the California implementation of speed enforcement is the requirement to use or basically the absence of permission to use video. So we interpreted it as a essentially requirement that these be enforced off still photographs only. And in the rest of the country and in the rest of the world, at least to my understanding, it's most common to use video as a backup to the radar that's used to actually measure speeds. So we worked with the vendor to develop new technology that was able to capture speeds with just 2 still photographs, which is consistent with the language of AB 645. But we've also been working with them on other technology improvements. So for example, early on in the fall of last year, we were seeing cameras drop offline at a rate of about 1.5 cameras per day. That's just computers freezing, cell connectivity issues, technology issues that we're all used to dealing with. But by working with our vendor, we've gotten that down to an average of about half a camera going offline a day or 1 camera offline every other day. But almost more importantly, when those cameras go offline, they're now coming back online within 20 minutes, whereas before they were going offline for as much as 15 hours at a time. So obviously, programs most effective when the cameras are online operating and issuing warnings and citations. And so this is an example, but this is also an example of how issues like this can translate through to citation data and make the accuracy of that data, I don't want to say questioned, but less appropriate to use for telling the story of behavior change. Another success story for us is that when violators are getting warnings and citations, we are not seeing them reoffend. So starting from the beginning of our warning period through March, about 2/3 of drivers who are issued a warning or a citation are not reoffending, and 82% of recipients have 2 or fewer. So I think that's a great success story. That's an indication that people are being educated by the program. They receive a warning, they learn about the importance of adhering to speed limits, and they're carrying that through, as they continue to drive around the city. It'll be interesting to see how this changes over time. Obviously, as the program continues on through the 5-year pilot, these numbers will fluctuate. People have more time to rack up additional violations. But I think from the first year, this is a really encouraging statistic. The other encouraging statistic that we've seen from the citations data is that when we launched the citations in August, we are issuing under 50% in that lowest bucket. That is to say, more than 50% for drivers traveling 16 miles per hour or more above the posted speed limit. And that's decreased from 51% down to under 30% in March. So the citations that we are issuing are for lower and lower speeds. So it's not just about seeing citations decline or speeders decline over time, but this is an illustration of how the speeds that they're traveling is also declining. A little bit of a forecast in terms of revenue. We spent about a little over $4 million standing up this program, implementing this program, and operating it in the first year. And we're projecting about $7 million of revenue. So the program more than pays for itself. That's different than a lot of folks have experienced with other photo enforcement, like say red light camera. It's different than what we've experienced with red light camera, where it's cost neutral at best. But this means that we estimate that we're going to have somewhere on the order of $3 million coming into our program, our traffic calming program for use in future years. Now, AB 645 obligates us to spend the excess revenues beyond what it cost us to operate the program on traffic calming, and it has a very specific list of improvements that it considers to be in the category of traffic calming. It also gives us a timeline to spend that money. So it holds the program accountable. That's of course important to ensure that the public perception is not that this program is a cash grab. That's of course not why we're operating this program, right? We're operating it for the benefits when it comes to speed reduction. But we are excited that we're going to be able to use this funding to also pursue traffic calming throughout our city. Looking ahead, we just published our latest quarter of data for January through March on our Data SF website. We have committed to publishing citations and warnings data on a quarterly basis. We've done it for red light camera for some time, and so we're doing it for speed enforcement as well. We're gearing up now to perform an evaluation of all of our camera locations. So this again is something that's required by AB 645 prior to the 18-month mark. So every location needs to demonstrate some effectiveness. There's 3 criteria: reduction in 85th percentile speed, 20% reduction in the number of speeders, or 20% reduction in the number of repeat offenders. So all of our sites are on track to meet one or more of those metrics right now. But as we get closer to the 18-month period, we're also planning to use this kind of effectiveness reporting as a mechanism or an opportunity to evaluate whether the cameras are in the most effective places or whether there are opportunities to move cameras around. Of course, like my colleagues mentioned, there's a lot of public interest in these cameras. We get a lot of people asking for more cameras, and because the bill limits us to only 33, we do want to make sure these cameras are positioned where they have the maximum benefit to public safety, while also maintaining the equity goals that are required from the legislation. We're also beginning to see a push for policy change. So this is a 5-year pilot. Our elected officials in San Francisco are very interested in seeing this program extended beyond the 5 years. They're very interested in seeing the number of locations expanded beyond the 33 that we've been allocated based on our population. And so they are urging their colleagues in Sacramento to begin talking about how to expand and extend the program. And I think as more cities come online, like Oakland and San Jose, we'll have friends to help with that legislative push. We continue to coordinate with other pilot cities, including our friends down in Southern California, who are a little bit slower to the party. But we're excited to see those cities come online, and we've been sharing the lessons that we've learned along the way to ensure that the programs down there are just as effective as the programs up here are already demonstrating. And then I think Lam mentioned that we do have this regional education campaign that we're coordinating with Oakland and San Jose to launch as all 3 programs are up and running. So some exciting early results, but looking forward to the next 4 years for sure. I think that's it for me.
So yeah, I think we have a Q&A portion now. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be monitoring the chat online as well. First question in the back in the middle.
I would realize that the sideshow
Can you-
is one of the things that allow you to post.
Can you stand up? I'm sorry, hard to hear.
Didn't realize that sideshows were one of the things that allow you to put application. I'm curious if anybody has used it for sideshows and what the implications of that and the success.
I know that the bill is a little bit prescriptive where it says PD has to respond to, was it like 4 incidences in a 2-year period? As we know, sideshows move. So, we just didn't consider that one. In the future, when this gets expanded with more, that's probably something we may want to consider. But as of right now, it seems like, we're all in agreement. Like, let's put them where the data showing people are.
One other piece to that is that after 18 months, you can begin to operate mobile cameras like truck mounted or van mounted cameras. And so potentially, it's not something that we've explored too much yet, but potentially that is a way to make the program more adaptable to behavior like that moves around. But again, with only a limited number of cameras, I'm not sure that it's realistic use at this stage.
In the back.
Is there any chance about where it's a school zone or maybe a school zone here to be
Yeah, so we do have cameras in school zones, but we're enforcing the all-day speed limit and not the camera speed limit. Sorry, not the school zone, but the speed limit there.
That's the same for us, and it restricts you to enforcing the school zone. One, it requires beacons to be installed along with the camera, so that's more infrastructure. But then it restricts you to enforcing only when those school speed limits are in effect. So an hour before the bell to whatever it is, 10 or 15 minutes after.
Oh,
Yeah.
the data was very promising. It seems like the before after speech was very promising. Have you also done studies for adjacent intersections like for spillover effects? Because speeders will go through multiple intersections.
We have not yet, but it's definitely something that we're interested in studying. I think Berkeley is beginning to do some research on that, and so I'm looking forward to see what their research comes out with. But it's definitely a concern that we've heard about speed camera programs. Are they truly effective in slowing people down beyond just the location that the camera is located at? And it's an important question to understand and inform how many cameras a city needs to truly be effective.
Jared, on one of your slides, you showed that the citations and warnings were going down, but then they started ticking back up. Are more people speeding? Are the standards different? And how are standards changing for cameras?
Yeah, so that is back to kind of the thing I was mentioning about the use of tube data or tube speed studies as the mechanism for illustrating behavior change. So we've worked hard with our vendor to ensure that we're capturing as many violations as we can. Early on, we wanted to ensure that the software was effective at capturing violations accurately, and as we've built our confidence in that, we've been able to capture a more complete picture of violations. So that's part of it. Another part of it is that we saw higher traffic volumes in February and March. We had a Super Bowl in February. Just springtime, better weather drives higher traffic volumes as well. And so I think quarter over quarter, we saw about a 10% uptick in the first quarter of 2026. And somewhere on the order of half of that is explained just by traffic volumes alone.
Thanks for the great presentation. So I have a question on the amount of fine charged to your vendors. Are there any plans to like tie this to the level? Because I can imagine rich people wouldn't like me.